Movie Bears podcast with Brad, Jim, and Will. What have they been watching lately? They're husky, hairy, huggable homos. Movie Bears podcast.
Hello all and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and along with my fellow husky, hairy, huggable homos and friends, we reveal, oh my gosh, I'm taking it back. Joys of doing it live. It's been a long ass day. Hello all and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and along with my fellow husky, hairy, huggable homos and friends, we love to review films, either current or classic on the show, all, of course, with our lovable gay bear twist. This week, we are bringing you a review of something solidly in the current column, that being Joker, Folie, Deux. Of course, there's a lot to unpack with this film. It's been getting a lot of hate. It's been getting a lot of love. It doesn't seem like a whole lot in between, maybe. Lots of question marks. We've got some thoughts. We want to chat about it. But we want to hear from you as well. So join the discussion. If you are listening live, jump into the live chat with us, say hello, share your thoughts with us about this film. If you're listening on digital tape delay through Apple Podcasts or Spotify, etc., jump into the comments on Facebook, Twitter, wherever you like to engage with us. Leave reviews too. That would be awesome. But make sure to join us. We want to chat at you. Speaking of we, this isn't the royal we, it is an actual we. There are two other people who are here to help break down this film. Let me introduce you to them. If you've been listening, the last 12 years, you probably know who the fuck they are by now. But Jim Pugliafico is with us here in the virtual studio. Babe, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I get to talk about a new movie that we've all seen with you guys. So I'm excited for that and ready to go.
Rock on. Well, so glad you're here to talk about this film with us. We've also got William Lindis on the party chat line. Will, so good to see you, friend. How are you?
Hey, I'm good to be here. Always glad to talk movies with you, especially when... Wait, what's that? For once in my life, I've a podcast that needs me. Wait, I'm sorry. No. Let me smoke. I'm glad to be here, guys. It's always fun to talk about movies, current and classic, and maybe even, some of our butt plugs as well. There's a lot of fun things on the horizon for us. I'm excited to see what you guys think about today's movie. Like you mentioned up front, Brad, pretty divisive one. I don't know fully where you guys landed at all. Like, I don't think you guys have posted anything about this one. So, gonna find out live.
Indeed. And Will, definitely a great reminder. We like to trot out our butt plugs at the end of the show and do a little show and tell with those. If you're like, what the fuck did I just tune into? Why are they talking about butt plugs? Relax. It's okay. It's just what we call the plug section of our show, where we talk about other things we love and want to put on your radar. But we're gay dudes who have to be risque, so we call it our butt plugs.
Relax, take a deep breath, and just go with it. And I promise you that section will feel great.
Especially if you have video head cleaner. Anyway, Jim, Will, are you both ready to get into our movie discussion for the week?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Let's do it. I'm Gaga for this one.
I may have used that pun in the description for the episode too. It was too good to resist.
I need to do more work on my pre-movie puns, obviously. I'm not in the same league as you both.
Listen, Jim, you'll put in the work and you'll rise like a phoenix.
I know I can do it. I just haven't put in the effort into that particular aspect of my performance.
You may not be our resident Joker, Jim, when it comes to puns. But man, you're pretty good at
Batman.
Anyway. Okay, I'm moving forward before I do any more shitty puns. Hey, listen, if you have not listened to our show before, you're not familiar with our format. We talk about movies totally spoiler free for about 10 minutes or so at the upfront. Tell you what this movie is, who's in it, what it's about, what we think about it from a non spoiler perspective, whether we think it's worth seeing. But as always, take that for what you will. Form your own opinion, make your own choices, do what you're going to do. But if you're interested in hearing what we think, we're happy to provide that. And then we'll give you fair warning before we open things up to spoilers. So if you're like, no, I don't want to hear what happens in this film until I see it, we'll give you an opportunity to step away or skip forward in the time index. If you're listening on digital tape delay, we got you covered. Don't worry. So all of that said, here we go. Our discussion of Joker, Folie, Deux. All right, Jim, do us the honor, if you will, of kicking this discussion off. What the heck is this movie? And what did you think? Is this worth checking out while it's in theaters, maybe catching on streaming or skipping entirely, given all the controversy around this? Can't wait to hear what you think. Where did you come down?
Like I said, I can't wait to get into it with you guys. So we have, as you said, Joker, Folie à Deux, and it's the follow-up to 2019's Joker by writer-director Todd Phillips, who also wrote and directed this one. This one also stars, Joaquin Phoenix as Arthur Fleck / quote unquote the Joker. I don't know. I guess he's referred to as a Joker in this movie, at least part of it. This one has Lady Gaga in it. Also Brendan Gleeson, Catherine Keener does a good job here, also in this role. So, and then you have some people who have returned from the previous movie, like Zazie Beetz. You have Leigh Gill, who plays Gary in the first movie. Gary Puddles is back in this one. So yeah, and then you have some new and familiar faces. Bill Smitrovich is in this one. You remember the dad from what was the name of the show with Corky? The sitcom.
That was Life Goes On.
Life Goes On. Yeah, he played the dad in that. He's in this one, and it took us a while to figure out who he was. I'm like, that guy looks familiar. Of course, he's aged a bit, but it looked great. Steve Coogan. So, yeah, man, I gotta say, going into this movie, we'd seen the trailer, of course, several times. I think the trailer's been out there for a while. Wasn't super excited to see this movie. I don't remember exactly where I ended up on the first Joker movie. I thought I was okay on it. And I'm like, based on what I saw in the trailers here, I'm like, oh, I'm really not. I don't know if I'm ready to dive into that world again or be drawn into that world again. And then especially as the movie opened and we're hearing things like, oh, it's Joker Folie à Deux is a musical now, and Lady Gaga has a whole bunch of numbers, and it just did not excite me for some reason. And I like musicals. Okay, I like musicals a lot of musicals. So going into this one, it felt a little bit like it was going to be a miss for me. And I hate going in with preconceived notions. I really do, but it's hard not to. It's hard to turn those things out of your mind. There were a lot of negativity around this movie when it first came out. It's hard to miss that when you're on social media, whether it be Facebook or the other social media stuff. But much to my surprise, I ended up really appreciating this movie. I know I might have a different opinion than a lot of people do on this movie, but I did appreciate it for what it was doing and what it was trying to do. I think it's obviously trying to be different. It's trying to distance itself from the canon of the Joker, kind of in Batman's villains world. It kind of wants to set itself pretty far from that and tell a totally different story. And I think therein lies the reason why I kind of liked it and why a lot of people probably hated it, because it never really came around to Oh yeah, here's the Joker villain we like. You know, the um, Heath Ledger Joker and the who played the Joker? No, Cesar Romero Joker and and who was it? Jack Nicholson even played the Joker, right? At one point.
Yep.
Certainly, this tells a different story, and we'll get into that more in spoilers. But here's the synopsis from IMDb. Struggling with his dual identity, and we saw that in the first movie, failed comedian Arthur Fleck meets the love of his life, Harley Quinn, while incarcerated at Arkham State Hospital. And the reason he's there is we saw the crimes that he committed in the first movie. And again, we'll talk about that more in spoilers. But this was an interesting movie, and yes, it is a bit of a musical. I don't know. I struggle with the definition of a musical. It definitely has some musical numbers in it that are integral to the plot. It's not complete musical from beginning to end with no gaps. There's a lot of regular narrative dialogue in this film as well, and plot. I saw this movie as a really kind of like a huge human tragedy. This movie to me is like a human tragedy. It's a societal tragedy also, I think, playing out in this film. And I like that this film leaned into that quite a bit. We'll talk about the ending later too, because there's a lot to talk about there, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really appreciated it. The way it's filmed, the art direction definitely draws you into a world of like a 70s, I guess 80s aesthetic. What you would imagine like a state state hospital for the criminally insane might be like on the inside with the characters in there. Yeah, I think this movie is a darn good movie. Now, whether people should run out and see it or not, I say, look, if you're wanting something a little different than the normal Batman, Joker, superhero stuff, and you're more into like like a complete drama with elements of like mental illness, the our criminal justice system, our societal issues about what is it, idolism? Is that what it is? Where you where society will like take on a false idol, if you will, and there's a lot of resonance to that right now, isn't there? I think in this movie that really jumped off the screen to me. But anyway, I've talked a long time. I didn't want to talk long. I like this movie. I think it's worth seeing, whether you go out and see it in the theaters or get it on streaming when ultimately it's released. I think it's worth seeing.
All right. Well, thank you so much for setting that one up and giving us your initial thoughts. Definitely looking forward to unpacking some of that with you, babe. But let's head on over to Will for a little bit. Will, briefly, what did you think of this film? How did it land for you?
It didn't land super well for me. Going back to the first Joker movie, I like this one better than the first Joker movie. I'm going to start with that. I think the first Joker movie leaned very hard into its incel roots, and we saw the way that resonated with its the audience that most appreciated that movie. And I didn't care for it then. I didn't care for the cultural impact it had. With this one, they're doing something a little bit different. The parts to praise, first of all, I do think that Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga do a pretty good job with their performances here. I also think that the atmosphere, the set dressing, that they're trying to use to capture that smoky, rainy, wet, cluttered street with smoke coming up out of the sewer pipes as as crime happens behind every corner, like kind of that feel of like that Taxi Driver New York City is what I sort of got from this. And I think they nailed that. It looked really cool, especially there's a scene where there's a street and there's like some like busted down theaters and stuff. It kind of felt like old school, like 42nd Street, New York. And that was cool to see on screen again. And I like that they try to sort of peel back what they. It's almost like they unleashed a weird monster with what type of story they created in the first one. And I'm not talking about the character as a monster. I'm talking about sort of the type of story they told. I think in this one there was some course correction that they were really aiming towards, and I appreciated that a lot because it showed a lot more depth than what the first movie had. My problem is sort of twofold. Despite its intentions and despite how good it looks, the script here is very limp. There are a lot of spots where the film just sort of drags along or kind of plods from section to section, spending too long with certain story beats to the point where it just felt frustrating to sort of watch because you could kind of see what was happening, but you weren't able to kind of get to the next scene. On top of that, the musical elements, I think, are part of what was such a slog here. I'm a fan of musicals as well. You know, I love a good musical, and a musical, when it's done at its best, I think it's the type of story that. So there's two types of musicals. There's like ones with dialogue, and then there's what's called sung through ones, which are the ones where it's like music forward to start, right? But the ones with dialogue tend to have this mentality of you talk until the emotions are too strong to speak, and then you sing. And then you sing until the emotions are too strong to sing, and then you dance. And that's sort of like a way of kind of going deeper and deeper into the emotive area of the characters. With the musical sequences, there are long sections where it is just a close-up of Joaquin Phoenix singing, and he's not the worst singer, but he's not a compelling enough singer to have that amount of weight held on him. I think there was only one, maybe 1.5 musical numbers in this entire film that worked for me, because they're the ones that really got to play with sort of the fantasy of what a musical could be. So this is sort of a right down the middle, like I give it a C- for effort, which is a huge upgrade from, you know, I thought the first one was a dog turd. I think this one really tried to course correct, but I don't think the execution was there. It was a miss for me ultimately, but I still applaud the effort.
All right. Well, Will, thank you so much for letting us know where you came down on this one as well. Definitely a mixed bag of reviews from us so far. For me, I won't take too long because I know we want to get into spoilers. I'm just going to go on record and say that I made this comment as we were coming out of the movie. I hadn't read any of reviews of the film beforehand, so I'm sure it's out there, but it's still brilliance in my head, so I'm going to call it out. For me, this was like a twisted version of La La Land, and I was referring to it as Ha Ha Land. I'm sure that's been done to death in articles by now, but that's what came to my mind. And Will, as you were kind of talking about it, I know you were much more positive on La La Land than I was, but this felt very similar to me in the sense that, like, kind of the same thing, right? Like the talking, singing, dancing, but like this film, it didn't feel as like self-indulgent as La La Land. I appreciated that, like, the musical numbers that we did have were a little more like subdued. Yeah, we had a couple like big dancing numbers and like dreamy sequences, but it didn't feel as like surreal, I guess. And so it kept me a little more grounded, I think, in the story, and what was happening, like with Arthur and his trial and with Harley. And I think the end result for me is, I know people are really like just polarized on this one, right? You either fucking love it to the moon, or you hate it so much you wish it didn't exist, for a lot of folks. But I think I'm kind of middle of the road. Jim, kind of to your point, I appreciated this more than I thought that I would. Watching the trailers, I'm just like, Jesus fucking Christ, with the smoking. Is this like a cigarette ad for 2.5 hours? Like, plus, like, you know, the first one was really hard to watch in places, especially as someone who, like, you know, I'll just come out and say it, like a lot of us, I have some mental health struggles as well, right? It's really hard to see when like society fails people who are slipping through the cracks and not getting the help that they need, and as a result, right, terrible things are happening. And I think these movies shine a light pretty directly on a couple of social commentaries around that. Jim, you mentioned the idolism thing. second week in a row, election type stuff is coming up. But like, how can people get behind a fucking murderer and like want him to go free and like lead them? Also, too, how do the people who love the Joker, get behind him too? So, it's really interesting. It's really interesting from like a societal standpoint, right? To look at it through that lens and analyze. And the music's kind of take it or leave it for me. I don't think Joaquin Phoenix is that great of a singer in this film, but he might be a better singer than we realize, because I was reading an interview. Apparently Lady Gaga was asked to not sing as good as she normally does, because it's not Lady Gaga singing in this movie, it's Harley Quinn singing in this movie. And Harley Quinn is not like a professional polished singer. And so who knows, right? Like maybe Joaquin Phoenix got some coaching too. So I'm giving some grace. The music wasn't the main part of this for me anyway. It was really the psychology of it all. So I'm glad that I didn't walk out of this like wanting to erase it from my memory. But I also kind of hope this is like the last one that we get. I feel like I'm done with this version in this universe. So that's kind of where I'm at. Are y'all ready to just maybe go ahead and jump into some spoilers, or is there something else you need to get out before we do?
There's one other thing I want to really mention, and Brad, you hit on it. I think everyone, if you're listening this far into the episode, and you remember the intro where I introduced myself by singing a bit of a song. I was coached by Todd Phillips before this episode to dial back my singing. So if you thought like, oh, that was a little off, a little pitchy or whatever, just know I normally sing much better than that, but I just sort of I brought it down a couple of notches just to make the podcast more believable.
Right. So as not to make the other podcasters, seem really bad, right? I mean,
that's why if you were like, oh, what is this notes? It's like that's intended. That's part of it, Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, good clarity there.
Let's do spoilers.
Letting us know well.
Ready.
Otherwise, let's do spoilers.
Okay. All right. Well, folks, we're going to go ahead and make that transition into the spoilery part of our film review. If you have not yet seen Joker, Folie, Deux, that's so fun to say. This is your chance to step away. Come on back in 24 minutes and 32 seconds for our butt plug show and tell. You're not going to want to miss that. Again, if you're joining midstream, you're like, what the fuck is that? It's just plugs at the end. Don't miss it. But spoilers are officially fair game. I am done rambling. Where the hell do y'all want to start?
I'll start by saying as much fun as it is to say the title, I actually appreciate the hell out of it as well, because it's a clever title. They could have just gone with Joker 2. But Folie Deux is a psychiatric term, or at least it's sort of like a nickname for a psychiatric term type thing, where it's like a shared delusion, or when multiple people suffer from like the same type of false sense of reality, right? And the fact that it also has the deux, which means two, in it makes for a neat little title, because this film is really about Joker and Harley and kind of their shared understanding of the world as filtered through the Joker as the prime persona, as opposed to Arthur Fleck being like the real person, and both of them sort of hanging their hat on the former and not the latter, and what that does as a result. I think that's clever, and I think that's that also feeds into the way that this film really tries to step back from the violence is okay if the world does shitty things to you mentality that the first film kind of agreed with, it's like society creates monsters and it's all society's fault that monsters create. And this one is like, society create monsters, but also monsters create monsters out of society. So it becomes this cyclical thing, and it really self-examines and pulls itself back away from that. I think that is smart. And that is on top of all of that, I think it's also I don't know if this is the right word for it, but like it feels ethical given kind of my issues with the first movie, like for them to sort of re-examine and look at the world in a little bit more of a black and white manner. So kudos to the title, and kudos to I didn't say what they were trying to aim for in the preload when I said I like the ideas. That's what I'm getting at. This is what I like that they went for.
Will, just to clarify real quick, in case you saw my like rotating motion on screen, I wasn't telling you to hurry up. Yeah. I was agreeing with your. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that.
Yeah, it's funny because doing it here, it's like, is he saying I'm crazy? Is he saying to hurry up, or is he saying cyclical? You know,
he's saying keep
maybe
going,
all three.
Keep going.
You don't know.
Is he working an invisible like organ, like an organ grinder? I don't know. I can't tell.
Ice cream.
I know what you're getting at. Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to just kind of hit on the music a little bit because it is a big part of this movie. For the most part, I love the song selections they made for this movie. Now, I don't know how many of these, or if any, actually, were written for the film, because these mostly seem like old pop, pop standards, right? For Once in My Life, and If My Friends Could See Me Now, That's Entertainment, To Love Somebody. And I really like the way they were, I like the way they were kind of stitched into the story, because they did add a layer of atmosphere and like amplification to what the characters were going through. These two characters were kind of both put into this this delusional world that they both kind of were thinking, and they kind of fed off each other. And you didn't know where it was going. I didn't know where this was going at the beginning. Yes?
Hey, babe. Sorry to interrupt the joys of doing it live. You're sounding really scratchy and breaking up. I thought maybe it was just me. I just checked in with Will, and he's hearing it too. Yeah. I don't know if you maybe want to try dropping and coming back, and we'll see if that's better. If not, we can try and troubleshoot from there. Okay. Sounds good. This is the part where like people are watching live and they're like, dance for us while we wait. So
let's see. Any other standards that we could sing?
I don't know.
I guess the apple dump. Oh wait, no, that's Charlie XCX.
Hey, Jim's back.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Oh, I heard you for a second, and then you went away.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, now I can. Okay.
Welcome back.
Can you hear me?
Can you just try saying a few words just so I can make sure?
Now you're cutting out.
Oh, okay. Will, do I sound okay?
Can you hear me?
I can hear both of you.
Okay. Yeah, I hear you, Jim. Okay. But I'm hearing a little bit of the scratch, but maybe just go with it for now, and then we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we have to throw it away.
No,
throw it away.
We'll keep going.
People will understand. These things happen.
Okay. I'll start back out when I want to, where I was talking about the music.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the musical, the songs they selected for this movie. I don't really know if any of them were written for the movie, but a lot of them were like a very well-known like pop standards and hit songs. And I thought they were stitched very well into the narrative of the story for the most part. Now, yes, as we mentioned, some of them came about as just kind of a singing within scenes. Some of them came about as like all of a sudden this big like dream sequence musical number happened. And I thought both worked very well for me. The only thing I was really questioning is at the beginning of the movie, and it really didn't have much to do with the music, there's an animated sequence at the beginning of this movie. And they start out right into it. And I'm sitting there. Of course, I wasn't sure what I was going to get with this movie. And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, if this is... I didn't think it was very good. I didn't think it... I don't know what its purpose was. I don't know if it was like a recap of the first, in a way, of the first movie for some reason. Why we'd have to put that in there. Why they would have to make it in the animated style they did. It didn't do anything for me. And I thought I said, okay, this could be a movie I might walk out of if this shit continues, because that part of it just didn't work for me. But once the movie settled in, like I said, I really enjoyed. Well, enjoy is a strong word. I really appreciated what they were trying to do with a lot of it. And at some point, we should probably talk about the ending to this film, because I think what happens in this movie is the filmmakers kind of pull the rug under us at the end of this movie, by telling us basically, at least the way I interpreted it, this is not the Joker. This is not the Joker that we're seeing here. This character played by Joaquin Phoenix, this Arthur Fleck character, is not the Joker that you all think you're getting, right? And I thought that was kind of cool. I know probably pissed a lot of people off, because at the end of the film, it appears at least that Arthur Fleck has been killed, stabbed to death in the prison by someone else, some other person who we can only assume is one of the other inmates that, kind of bought into the whole idea of the Joker is more than one person, right? I actually kind of appreciated that, and I said, okay, this movie's got balls to do that, like to kill its main character. You're not going to get Arthur Fleck, and you're not going to get Arthur Fleck's Joker in, even if they have a third movie, which I know, babe, you don't want, but it puts a stake in the ground and says, this is it as far as this character. At least I hope. If there is a third movie, I hope they don't undo that. I think that would be very bad, to kind of go back and remove what I thought were really, really big stakes and a really big swing at the end of this movie, plot wise and kind of canon wise. We've at this point, the audience is invested two long movies into this character, and at the end, he's killed off by someone we don't really even know, and that's kind of a ballsy thing to do.
Well, I'll plant my flag and say I don't think there'll be another one of these, for a few reasons. This story kind of went it told the descent to hell, like in the first movie, all of society creates this monster, and all of society starts to band behind this monster and exalt him. And in this one, we get to see the monster coming back from the ledge and trying to reverse the damage that was done. And honestly, it's probably too late. The genie's out of the bottle, but sometimes the most we can do is be responsible for our own actions. And I think there's something cool and interesting about that as a complete story. But on top of all of that, this movie's tanking at the box office. So it's going to be hard for them to justify making a third one. And I don't think narratively there's really the legs or the setup for a third one, right? So I don't think we have to worry about all of that. I do think the death at the end was a good pull. Less so because of this sets up the Joker. I think more than anything, I think it's trying to say that there will, at least in this world that's been imagined here, the cat is out of the bag. You can't unring the bell. At this point, the damage has been done. There's always going to be a Joker. There's always going to be Jokers because of the way that society latched on to this one chaotic character. And so I think it's less important that this is the Joker that fights Batman and here's two. That's not what this is, right? Mm-hmm. This is just really cementing a legacy of hate. I think about the incel groups that are operating right now. There's some people that have put some toxic shit online and have gotten a little older and have been like, you know what? That was not the best. They've pulled back away from that, but they've spawned another generation of people who spout that same stuff. So you can never fully go back once you've gone there. That's a sombering, but also a cool angle for them to explore.
What do you both think of the character of Harley in this film? How Harley was portrayed as a person who she's basically one of the followers, right? She's like maybe the most maniacal follower of all of them because she self what do you call it into the asylum.
Checks herself
She
in.
checks herself in.
Yeah, she checked herself in to the asylum with the specific purpose of, meeting up with Arthur Fleck and kind of getting behind him and encouraging him to be the Joker, to be that figurehead of what you think might be some kind of weird movement or something. I thought that was an interesting concept and tragic from an Arthur Fleck standpoint, right? Because obviously he's struggling with his schizophrenia or whatever it is. And she was just about the worst thing that could have come along, in his incarcerated life. And he kind of took the bait, hook, line, and sinker, played along, kind of enjoyed the fact that here's this person who's taking an interest in him when nobody else in his life did. But all along, she had nefarious purposes behind it. And she showed her true colors at the end when he kind of came to the realization that he is Arthur Fleck and not really the Joker. And that was, when she basically checked out and, dumped him on the street. So I just thought that was an interesting, like, personal dynamic that this movie dove into a lot. It really is a relationship movie. And a relationship movie and a movie about, issues centered around mental health and schizophrenia and how we treat each other.
The whole Harley thing, you might laugh, but it reminds me of friends who know that I was in tech support for a long time. And they would reach out to me and be like, Brad, I haven't talked to you in a little while. I've really been missing you. How are you? And I'd be like, oh my gosh, it's so great to hear from you. It's been a hot minute. I'm doing well. How about you? And they're like, oh, I'm doing good too. Oh, by the way, I'm having this issue with my computer. I was wondering if you could help me. And about a year and a half ago, I put out a thing on social media and I was like, friends, I love you, but I'm done being your tech support. Like, no one's paying me to do this. It's a lot of work. I'm moving past it. I'm sorry. And those same people have not reached out to me a lick since.
What's interesting about that is I just wish they knew. So like Brad, at the same time as he did this, he started like a group chat for, like, he called it his real friends. And in that one, he said, hey, I just put something out on Facebook by real friends. You can reach out to me for tech support whenever you want. No, I'm obviously joking.
Yeah.
Use my discount, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's always kind of bugged me a little bit, this whole thing of like, I'm only going to associate with you if I can use you, right? And I see that happening between Harley and Arthur, right? As long as he is invested in his like whole Joker thing and the movement and she is all for it. The minute he starts coming to his own realizations and wrestling with his own demons and battling them down a little bit, she's like, well, if you can't be what I want you to be, like, I'm out. Like, I'm not going to stay here for you, right? And it's really unfortunate. But I mean, speaking of mental health issues, right? Like narcissism and manipulation, and I mean, like all of that shit are problems, right? I don't know if she's like a clinical like sociopath. I don't even know how we would nail down like what her character is, but clearly she's a piece of work too.
Yeah, it's hard because there's sort of two ways of looking at this. I think within the context of the film, I think she serves an important purpose to sort of personify the mentality of the masses, right? Because it's not just his relationship to her and her relationship to him and how she, only uses him when he's useful, but she's sort of the mouthpiece for, if we're talking about this in like a kind of a Greek play perspective, for the chorus, for all of the people that are also feel the same way and also turn on Fleck once he sort of denounces his Joker mentality. The hard part about this is, you want to only look at the characters and the story within the world that it exists, but they're borrowing from other characters. So some of that stuff you have to think about, because otherwise they wouldn't have used those characters. They would have been original characters, right? And it is a little hard because the story of Harley Quinn in every other kind of like piece of media and kind of like the core of her is she is a woman who was gaslit and abused, physically, sexually, emotionally, psychologically, in every way possible by the Joker until she finally started to develop her own persona and her own agency outside of that, and has been a much more compelling like character since. So it is hard to see the character who was the victim sort of turn into the abuser in this story in some ways. And I can't not think about that, but also when I look about it within the context of the story itself, I think the role works very well. So I'm of two minds.
So, Will, I think what you're saying is like in other media about the Joker and Harley, she is much more of a victim of the Joker's control, I guess, if you will, and nefarious effects on her, right?
Yes.
And therefore, you think she's sympathetic in that way.
Oh, she's very sympathetic.
Where in this movie, she's kind of flipped that around, right? And I think he's kind of the one who's been manipulated more in this movie, right, than her. And it's an interesting switch to me. And like I said, this movie takes some swings that I think are big narratively and go against what's kind of out there in the world when it comes to the Joker and Harley. And part of me is thinking, well, I think this is why a lot of people may have been completely turned off by this movie, because it didn't go the way they expected or wanted or have been conditioned to see.
I want to, at least for myself, I can't speak for
Not you,
everyone.
Will. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about like a lot of what I'm seeing out there is some of the criticism I think stems from that.
Well, there's also a group of critics, not critics, but like a group of people who are not caring for this movie. You kind of came from the other side of things. There are a lot of, again, like there was the incel fans from the first ones, the ones who were like, society has wronged me, so I now relate to the Joker. People kind of like the same people who like look at Rick from Rick and Morty as like a sympathetic character would look at the Joker from the first Joker movie as a character to aspire to, who look at these sort of like, who look at Homelander from The Boys as aspirational. This is a tough group, but they're the pipeline that went from incels to Nazis totally existed and totally happened on the internet. But anyways, there are several of them who sort of pushed back against this movie for sort of defanging their Joker in this one, right? And then there's for me, it's a tough line to walk, because incels are also kind of the group that's known for sort of like taking like women and then sort of turning them into the cause of all of men's problems. And so that was another issue that like I had potentially with sort of like the what they did with the Harley characters. Like there are worlds where this could have resonated in a very different way. I think the fact that it sort of landed limp with both the people that were hated the first one and the people that loved the first one, and really only left like room for people who are kind of a little bit more on the middle ground for the first one. I think that's telling to just sort of the overall execution here. I don't know. This is a fascinating movie to me for that exact reason, right? This is not a movie this is not a boring movie. They're slogs, but they're sloggy parts, but the overall package is not a boring movie. And I would rather see a movie that is interesting, even if it fails, than a boring one. There's, we've watched so many movies that, that we've reviewed on this show that if we look back through our episode list right now, like 6 months, we're going to see some movies where we're like, I don't even remember seeing that, let alone reviewing it. Whereas I think this one, I'm still going to be thinking about at the end of the year, not fully positively, but it at least still will have some resonance.
But is this movie better than Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters?
Nothing is better than Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters because it was one
It
of our
gets
first
better every year.
It's one of the first reviews that we did as a group. So that movie will always have a special place in my heart.
Agreed. Speaking of special places in our heart, we have a very special friend in the chat with us right now, Bobby Miller. Bobby, it's been a hot minute since we've seen you. So good to catch up with you. He says, hello, my bears. Hello, Bobby. Good to see you, friend. Well, folks.
Hi, Bobby.
Thoughts? Any other burgeoning thoughts you want to get out, or do we feel like this one's pretty well cooked?
I think this one's pretty well cooked.
What the show needs now is another segment.
I thought you were going to say, is plugs, butt plugs.
Let me, hold on. Take two. What the world needs now is plugs, butt plugs.
I love it. You even got a little like run in there. That was
I
amazing.
did, yeah.
That was good.
Brad, you're my muse.
I'm glad you sung that one down a little, Will, to make us not look bad again.
That's exactly. I was like, I sandbagged that one.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. All right. Well, I think that wraps us up then for this film. We're going to go ahead and close the show. Oh, wait. No, we can't close the show. I was going to, but plugs.
But
plugs. It's an excuse for us to say butt plugs on our show. Whatever. Go with it. We love it. After 10 years, 12 years, whatever, we had to do something to switch it up, right?
Yeah.
But plugs is the part of our show where we put things we love on your radar in the hopes that you might love them too. Over the last 12 years, we have made many recommendations and helped many people find new films, TV shows, video games, albums, comics, you name it. Gosh, we need an intern who could go back and listen to the end of every episode with plugs and make a master list of everything that we've called out over the last 12 years. If anyone wants to do that, I'll give you $20. I'm sure that's enough. Right?
I'll pitch in another 5.
There we go. 25. In any event, let's head on over to Will. Will, what is your butt plug of the week?
I was going to do just one, and I'm going to mention a second one just because you mentioned, and also comics. I just want to let people know the Moon Knight comics from the last few months have been fantastic. Like it's a great time to be a Moon Knight fan. So pick up those comics. They're good. That's all I'm going to say about it. The movie that I want to plug, though, as something that, gosh, this is going to be such an acquired taste. I want to go ahead and kind of preview it with that. There's a movie out right now called Frankie Frico. It's on limited release right now. So here's what you need to know about Frankie Frico. First of all, last year, 2 years ago, one of the best movies of the year was a movie called PG, Psycho Gorman, by director Steven Kostanski, who is a weird dude, a very weird dude. PG is great. You should go watch it. Frankie Frico is his sort of mashup of a few different things. It takes like that 80s vibe of like the square versus like the super cool, relaxed people that are trying to make the square feel more comfortable, with the Freddy Freaker party line commercials. I don't know if you remember those, but those are bizarre to begin with, as well as things like the Garbage Pail Kids or Gremlins or any of those types of things. And it crashes those all together into this movie about these 3 little monster puppet dudes who befriend this guy who's just vanilla as hell and decide to get him on a party train towards becoming more exciting and having more fun. And with that, like all sorts of shenanigans and hijinks ensue. You have to be in the mood for absurdist because this is weird shit, but it's funny. It's good weird shit. I think this resonates with people who like the if you like those like Adult Swim infomercials, like kind of the vibe of those comedic things, and you know what I'm talking about there. Or like Too Many Cooks was one of those, which I went big on the internet a few years ago. You're gonna like this movie. You know, if that's not your style of comedy, that's all right. This one is a very specific flavor, but man, if this is your flavor, you're gonna love it. It's called Frankie Frico. It's in theaters right now on limited, and I believe it's going to be hitting streaming pretty quickly too. That's what the first one did as well. I don't think this is a Shutter pickup, but it'll be out there soon. Yeah, just keep an eye out. It'll be around.
World needs more good weird
I watched
shit,
the trailer,
so-
Will, and I gotta admit, I almost didn't get through the trailer.
It's what, but it's one of those ones where once you settle into the world,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes once you
It's a
kind of
vibe.
relax, into it, yeah, the vibe really takes over.
Yeah.
Speaking of, does anyone else have a butt plug?
a vibing butt plug.
Jim, have you got a butt plug you want to share around?
Well, I know
this
Will.
week?
We were trying to decide if we plugged this movie before, but I don't know if we've done a full plug on it before, like a full butt plug on it before. So we're gonna do that now. And if you've already heard of this movie, great. If you've already watched it, even greater. This is a movie on Netflix right now called Will and Harper. It's been getting a lot of buzz, and rightly so. I did watch it. It's a documentary where Will Ferrell and his longtime friend Harper Steele, who's recently transitioned from Andrew Steele to Harper Steele. Sorry for the dead name mention. And they go on a road trip together. They're old friends, and they go on a road trip together mainly because Harper wants to see if she can do the same things she used to do before transitioning, which is travel around and go to these dive bars and rodeo events and car races and baseball games and still be accepted for who she is now. And with Will Ferrell as a close friend, kind of along as a sidekick, and to some degree a bit of a buffer, right? I mean, if you've got a uber famous movie star with you, it's kind of a buffer and a diffuser, I guess, for different situations. I love this movie mainly for the reason of like, this is one of the most humanly empathetic movies you will see, right? There's a ton of empathy that obviously Will Ferrell has for his friend Harper. And I think this movie can instill empathy in other people, especially towards people who are transitioned or who are transitioning and really just are looking for acceptance. And it kind of goes through a lot of that. And the most fascinating parts for me are when Harper is talking about her experiences in either transitioning or after she's transitioned, and the struggles that she's had and still has with her identity. So it's called Will and Harper. It's a cool little documentary road trip. I strongly recommend people watch this, especially people in our community. But to be honest, I think it would do more for people outside of our community to watch this film.
I love that you're calling this out. And Will, I think you talked about this through the lens of Fantastic Fest last week, but Jim, your call out about people outside of our community really benefiting, I totally agree. But I also will say there is a lot of like misunderstanding of the trans experience and a lot of transphobia, even though it may be hard to admit to ourselves sometimes, that exists in our community.
Yeah.
And I think everybody should see this film. Gay, straight, queer, whatever. I think there's a lot to be gained from this. And just huge props to Harper for sharing her story, and Will for going along on a road trip and bringing some laughs, but also some really unexpected like heartfeltness from him as well. It's an amazing documentary, hands down.
And that's why I think it is so important, is because not only is it good for both people that would consider themselves allies and people who maybe hadn't even considered this perspective before at the same time, it's also regionally based, because this is a road trip movie, right? And so they're going through different parts of the United States, and they have a tough time going through a part of Texas in this movie. And they then brought that film, like Brad, you mentioned, at Fantastic Fest, which is here in Texas, and so that was kind of the not even elephant in the room. It was, the tiger was put on the table and we shouted at it. Just sort of the idea
Yeah.
of like, hey, like, this is a different audience. Like, this is a group that is like more open to experiences and it's happy to have you here. Yet you still had a shitty time in this state. And we have to acknowledge both of those things at the same time. And to Will and Harper's perspective, they were like, someone asked in the Q&A, like, did you feel weird coming back to Texas? And Harper said, absolutely not. I've driven through Texas a million times and I love this state and several of the other states, even though I no longer feel super safe there at the same time. And that's an experience. That's a very real lived experience.
Yeah, and I think one thing the film drove home was that all these experiences they have, whether it's in Texas or Oklahoma or California or New Mexico or wherever they were, each experience can be different, right? People are varied everywhere, whether they're in, all people in Texas are not like the people in Texas that, gave them a bad experience in this movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just like all people in an Oklahoma dive bar are not the cool people that we got shown in this movie, right? So I think the basic premise of this movie is just kind of empathy toward people, right? These are people who need understanding. They need to feel accepted, and there's no reason in the world they shouldn't be.
Yep, agreed. Solid butt plug, Jim. Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate that.
Wait, Brad, so mine's a vibe, Jim's is solid. Let's see what adjective we can add to yours.
Mine is strong and rugged, but full of hope.
Oh.
My butt plug this week is a bittersweet one. Over the last few years, I have been enjoying the last superhero show to exist on the CW. It started before the CW was bought by Nexstar, which has been transitioning to all reality programming. And that show is Superman and Lois. It's been a phenomenal show over the last 3 seasons. Unfortunately, it's only getting one more season. But fortunately, Nexstar was like, you know what? We'll fund one more season to wrap everything up. It's a reduced season, less episodes, a bunch of the cast are gone, but the main principals are still there, and they're going to wrap things up, which is fantastic. That the show didn't just end. It could have just gone. But the first 2 episodes actually came out last night relative to when we're recording. I haven't gotten a chance to watch them yet. But the trailers have been all over TV, and they're doing the Death of Superman story with Doomsday. And I'm hearing that this is like the best like on-screen version of that to ever be a thing. And with that having been one of my favorite Superman stories, I mean, I was reading those comics, that arc, what was it, Will, like 2 years or something, right? That they were coming out across that. It was kind of my Superman back then. Not so much Superman with a mullet after Superman returned, spoiler alert. But I'm really, really excited to see what this show and the caliber of its writing and acting and effects do with that storyline. So I can't wait to jump in and watch it. But listen, if you haven't seen Superman and Lois yet, the previous seasons are available. Absolutely worth a watch. Tyler Hoechlin is probably like my 3rd favorite Superman out of all the Supermen. So give it a watch. Check out the last season. It's starting to come out now, and it'll be out every week at weird random weeks that the CW chooses because they don't have a consistent airing schedule. But you know what? It's worth it to stay tuned in and follow up. So
for those of us that have cut the cord, where do you watch it?
You can watch it through the CW app. You can watch it free with ads, of course. Or you can also like buy a season pass to it, like on like Apple TV and some of the other services that offer that. Yeah.
Coolio.
Yeah. So there's my my super butt plug. Strong and full of hope.
I love it.
Yours is one of those ones you can fill with something, which is pretty awesome.
Indeed.
You don't see those often.
Right. Well, I think that wraps us for this week. It's been a lot of fun, even though, you know, Joker, Folie, Deux was kind of a, you know, mixed bag for us, like for a lot of people, I suppose. But it was great coming together with you guys and talking about it. This is always a highlight of my week doing this. And I love when we have the opportunity to. Also, listeners, you may be feeling divisive about the film as well. If you eventually tune in after you see it, we still want to hear from you. So hit us up on Twitter at MB Podcast, or find us on Facebook, Movie Bears Podcast. Let us know what you thought about the film. And if you want to chat with us between now and our next recording, Jim, where can folks interact with you online?
Oh, you can check me out on Letterboxd. For those of you that haven't checked out Letterboxd yet, this is a good reminder that it's out there. You can log into the website or you can download the app. You can find me there under at JJP Out West. My initials JJP and then the 2 words Out West all together. That's where you'll find all my ratings for movies in probably the last few years now. So it's interesting to see. As I see movies, I rate each one, and you can maybe see what they are. Message me on there. Tell me what, you know, I'd like to see your movie ratings as well. So check it out. It's on Letterboxd. And then you can also find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico.
All right. Thank you so much, babe. Appreciate you doing that. Will, where can folks find and interact with you?
I'm on Facebook. It's where I get personal and where I get real. Just look for William Lindis there. I'm also on Letterboxd. Look for the Movie Bear. I know I mentioned this last week's plugs, mentioning it again here. I've got a list up of all of the films I saw at Fantastic Fest. So if you wanted to know about Will and Harper or The Wild Robot, you could have learned about it first from my Letterboxd. But also, like, there's some films coming out like over the course of the rest of this year. Anora coming out in a few weeks. Heretic. With Hugh Grant. There's a lot of films that I've had a chance to set a movie we might be talking about next week. It's different things that are out now or out soon that exist on Letterboxd. So come give it a look, and then make your recommendations there too. I'll follow you back and get some good feedback from you. So yeah, just look for the Movie Bear on Letterboxd.
All right. Well, thank you for that as well, folks. If you want to chat with me, you may absolutely follow me on Letterboxd. You can find me there at iBradPro. And you can find me on Facebook. Just look for Brad Harris. I am very much available to chat about films or whatever. Please just, you know, let me know that you're not a clever bot. Let me know you are coming from the show. All right. Well, I think that wraps us up. We're going to go ahead and close things down until our next recording. Hope to see you then, everybody. In the meantime, stay safe and watch some motherfucking movies because there's some good stuff coming out. Check them out. We'll see y'all next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Now that's entertainment. Bye.
That's all, folks.